This is Mrs. Fraser, and this video is going to go over domain and range. So to review what domain and range are, remember domain is all the x values, okay, in a function, and your range is all the y values in a function. So by identifying all the x values and all the y values in a function, we can describe what a function looks like. We can describe kind of the window or image of that function. So let's look at some examples. We're going to start with discrete functions. Remember, discrete functions mean that they are not connected with a line, that there is a clear beginning, a clear end, and there's specific values. To those. So some examples that we're looking at here, I'm going to look at number 2 here, and I'm going to list all, start with my domain, and I'm going to list all of my x values. So if I look on my graph, anywhere that I see I have an x value, I am going to highlight on my x-axis. So my domain in this graph is -3, -2, -1, and 2. My range in this graph, all of my y values, is -3, 0, and 2. So we're always going to list our domain and range and in these set brackets. We also are going to list them from least to greatest. It's just a way to organize that information. So let's look at a continuous relationship. So remember, a continuous relationship can have a beginning and end, like you see here in 1, 2, and 3. But you can see the difference is it doesn't have specific values. It's connected with a line, a solid line, meaning that it continues between those 2 points, any values between those 2 points. So that's very different from our previous page that had those specific values. So we're going to write our domain and range slightly different. So let's start with our domain. So my domain is all of my x and all of my x values. So if I look here, if I look to the furthest left and to the furthest right that my function goes, my domain starts at -3 and it ends at +2. So -3 is less than or equal to all my x values, and all my x values are less than 2. So you can see I have a less than or equal to symbol because I have a closed circle here. So this value is included in my function. But here I have an open circle, so I just have a less than symbol, not an equal to symbol, to represent that all my x values have to be less than the value 2 and cannot be equal to 2. Okay, so now let's look at our range, or all of my y values. So I'm going to start with the least and highlight all the way up to my greatest y value. So I can see my least y value is -3. So I'll have -3 is less than or equal to all my y values, and all my y values are less than or equal to my max y value, which is 5. Okay, so we're going to look at our last type of example, and then you should go back and complete the rest of the graphs in your booklet. So here I have an unbounded relations and functions. So you can see I have arrows indicating that the function is continuing on in that direction. So we're going to use number 2 again. We're going to start with all of my x values. So if I look at all of my x values on this graph, you can actually see that there is no actually clear beginning and there's actually no clear ending in my x values. So to write this, there's actually several ways to write it. I can write it as all real numbers, or I also can write it as negative infinity is less than all of my x values is less than infinity. So I'm going to say that again. Negative infinity is less than all my x values. All my x values are less than infinity. So you notice we don't have an equal to symbol here because you can't actually be equal to infinity. So you're not ever going to see that equal to symbol with the infinity. Thank you. Okay, so now let's look at the range of my function. So you can see that I don't have a clear least value in my range, but I do have a clear max value in my range, and that is 1. So again, there's a couple of ways that you may see or write the range for this function. You can see it as all my y values are less than or and equal to 1, or you can see it as negative infinity is less than all my y values, and all my y values are less than or equal to 1. Okay, so you should go back and complete the domain and range for the rest of those graphs. You can check that on Canvas on the key that is on the page.